So, my local dealer is having an open day. I'm going to go along and I'm going to try and steal a couple of test rides. But what I really want to do is I want to have a look around their workshop. I've always been curious how main dealers run their motorcycle workshops. So I'm going to do that today. But before I go, I've got a couple of bikes being dropped in the workshop, and I'm going to pull the forks out of my track bike because I had some gold valves sitting around for a while, so we're going to get them fitted. That's one fork leg off, so let's get this stripped down the bench while I'm waiting for these bikes to turn up. I think that's one here now. That's the first one being dropped off. And this is number 2. Bikes are here, so let's go. I'll show you what these are later. I got my essentials loaded up and it was just a 20-minute drive down the road to Ling's Power Sport. I can't thank them enough for allowing me to spend the whole afternoon there, ask all the questions, things I wanted to know, and then let me ride basically whatever I wanted.
Even the 1390, it's also the 990.
Oh, I like the 990.
Honestly.
I'm a fan of the small bikes.
Like, these are our demo bikes.
It's got a whole fleet of demos.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like, there's not many places that have got a demo fleet as extensive as this. Yeah.
After spending a couple of hours talking through the whole KTM range, I really wanted to know about the mechanical workshop. This is a brand new dealership, so they're still in the process of setting it up, but I really wanted to know what their plan was for in the future and how they were going to run it. Basically, so I can compare it to mine.
MOT bay that's going to be installed. I think for us that's really important when we get the MOT bay.
Is that these lines down here?
Yeah.
Just the outline?
Yeah, exactly right.
You take on much at the minute?
Yeah, and it's sort of building and building, obviously.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit slow, one because we're new, but also because the weather's been fairly grim. As soon as the weather comes
That's
in.
the same for me. I'm super quiet over the winter, and as soon as that first sunny weekend, I get 100 phone calls.
Yeah.
It's the same for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many mechanics have you got?
So at the moment I've got one full-time mechanic.
Yeah.
I've recruited another mechanic, and they're starting circa the end of this month.
It is a lovely day, isn't it? Big question, am I allowed to ride one on the test bikes?
Yeah.
Is there any that allowed to go?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Depends what you want to ride. 390 Duke.
Yeah. You got 790 as
I
well?
think we've got a 790 Adventure, 790 Duke. I think we might even have a 390 Adventure.
How about 790? How about the little 790? Next one in.
Yeah, 790 Duke. Yeah.
Shit, I don't think I've got my licence on me. Bollocks. All that way just for this. Let's go.
All right, let's go.
Happy days.
Thank you very much.
No, you're very welcome. Yeah, there's nothing really too untoward with the bike. I'll just run through the menu bit or whatever.
Do it.
Rider modes. At the moment you're in street.
Perfect.
But they're all available, so you can go into track if you want to. Quick shifter on at the moment.
Is that
as well.
up? Is that up, not down?
Up and down.
Up and down,
So,
is it?
yeah, quick
Cool.
shifter plus, so up and down.
Got both.
That is about all there is.
Excellent.
You got half a tank to go and play with.
Thank you very much. I'll see you in a little bit. And just like that, I was let loose on the KTM 790. Now, I've made it very clear in the past that I don't enjoy test riding customers' bikes, but a demo bike is a bit different. I'm going to give it a few miles to warm up, and at the same time it gives me a good chance to feel out the bike. You can't suss out a bike in the first couple of miles anyway. I've wedged a microphone in my helmet. Let's see if I can get some sort of audio. So, warmed it up. Well, I think you can tell from that it did not work, so I'm going to carry on with the voiceover. What I noticed instantly about this bike is how well it fit me. I'm on the shorter side, 5'5", and this bike fit fantastically. If you're well into the 6 foot, you'll probably find yourself quite cramped on this bike, but that kind of shows where this bike sits in the KTM range. It's definitely more of a step up from the 125 390 bikes, rather than trying to compete with the Super Dukes, the 1390s, the bigger bikes in the range. This bike is definitely designed to be a stepping stone in the range rather than something to compete with the 990. It's an in-between bike, and I would say it's a perfect transition if you're riding the 125 and the 390 and you're not quite ready to go for the Super Dukes, the big bikes. But you can't argue how fun this bike is to ride. Typical of the Duke range, is super agile, nimble, feels really light to ride, and from the smaller bikes that's exactly what you expect. These A-road, B-road riding is just perfect for this bike. It was about this time I noticed an Aston following me, so I had to do a little turnaround to see if I could follow it down the road.
See if I can. Very small this bike. Let me see if I can get that.
Yeah, I hadn't quite worked out where the indicator cancel was yet, so I hit the horn a few times. Is at this point I started to use the quick shifter more, and I was really surprised at how well it went down the gearbox, but every now and again on the upshift, you could definitely feel that it was a pretty basic system. It just wasn't as smooth or as accurate as you'd expect for some high-end systems. But saying that, there's very few middle range bikes that come spec'd with an up and down quick shifter, so any sort of shifter on this bike is still a bonus. I also had a play with the rider modes earlier. The race and sport mode were just a little bit too aggressive on the throttle response when you're on the road. It was actually nicer to ride on the road when you're in road, let's say. I know, no shit Sherlock, but maybe on track it would be ideal. And that kind of brings me on to the power of this bike. It is a little lacking in top end, but that is not what this bike is designed for. It's a stepping stone bike, like I've been saying. It's not a big muscle bike. If you wanted that power, you just step up to the 990. One thing I hate from manufacturers is when they hold back items to increase the value of their higher end bikes. But KTM don't do this. You've got all of the mod cons, all of the things you'd expect on the higher end bikes on a mid-level bike. That's quick shifter, steering damper, rider modes, so it's a really good high-end middleweight bike. That's who it's for. Someone who wants that high-end bike in the middleweight category, who is stepping up from the smaller bikes, or who wants something that's small, light, agile, but still got all of those add-ons. That's what this bike is. With the keys dropped back, I just had to go look at the e-bikes. Now I love a mountain bike. The e-bikes were super cool, but the best thing there was this little gas. It was already sold, I couldn't ride it. So back to the workshop it is, and we're going to finish off those forks.
That's pretty disgusting oil, really. I should have changed that a long time ago. So these are sometimes called emulator valves. Basically what they're trying to do is make a traditional old school style fork work like a modern cartridge fork. If you've got adjusters on the top, you've pretty much got a cartridge style fork. Basically because old school forks have dampening which is linear, so it's very, very straight line in kind of speed against dampening force. Whereas modern forks have a step or a break off point in how the dampening works. So basically when you're at lower movement speeds in the suspension, you've got more dampening, and then when it's moving really quickly, you've got less. And this is the valve. You can see it's got a spring on it, and it gets supplied with lots of different colored springs. Basically, these change at which point that break-off point is, so you get more dampening at the bottom end, and then the spring opens at a certain speed, and then it goes back to standard dampening from the fork. That's the idea of it. And I now need to make the holes bigger on the old damping rods. Forks back together so I can measure the spacer, cut it down because we've added space with the valve. Basically so the preload's then right. Pull up the new seal and then I'll lock it on. In goes the valve, followed by the spring. Yep, spacer. Measure that included with the cap. I'll just pass it off in my lathe. bit shorter so I can make up the difference with my preload adjusters. So they spec 20 weight forecoil to be using those, and that is the weight I do not carry. That's really heavy. So I'll order some of that and get it out. So next video you might see is this bike on track with those forks in it, and I'll let you know how I get on.